All right, welcome. Today we're going to talk about something fascinating. A simple visual map that's not just improving patient care, it's saving the health system millions of pounds. Yeah, you heard that right. Let's dive in. Okay, so let me ask you something. What do you think is the biggest problem, the biggest bottleneck in healthcare right now? You might think, oh, it's waiting lists or funding or maybe not enough tech. And yeah, those are all huge. But the evidence we're looking at today, it points to something, well, something a lot more human. Turns out it might just be a difficult conversation. Seriously, that single moment, the one between a patient and their doctor, when that moment doesn't go right, the ripple effects are just massive.
So let's talk about that. Let's dig into this hidden bottleneck, because it causes a shocking amount of waste and inefficiency all the way down the line. Okay, so there's a clinical term for this. It's called decisional conflict. Fancy words. But what it really means is that feeling of total uncertainty a patient has when they just don't get it. They don't fully understand their condition or what their real options are. And what happens then? Well, you get more and more appointments, delayed decisions, and a system that's just clogged up with follow-ups that honestly shouldn't even be necessary. And listen, this is not some small niche problem. Get this. The data shows that a whopping 50%, that's half, of all patients show up to a specialist consultation completely undecided. They have no idea what they want or need. They're basically stuck in this clinical limbo before the doctor has even said hello.
So, how on earth do you fix something like that? Well, a really smart group in the UK came up with something they call a new kind of map. It's a tool designed for one thing, to tackle this exact uncertainty head on.
They're called the Torbay charts. And no, this isn't just another boring leaflet you toss in the bin. It's what they call a consultation integrated framework. But honestly, the best way to think about it is like a GPS for your treatment journey. It lays out everything on one single page, all the possible routes, from managing it yourself all the way up to surgery. And this is what makes them so different. You know those standard leaflets? They just give you info, usually outside the doctor's office. But these charts, they're used right there, during the conversation. They match the options directly to where you are in your illness. It just massively reduces that feeling of being overwhelmed, that cognitive load. And, as you're about to see, it has a huge impact on what people decide to do.
Okay, so let's get to the good part, the impact. What actually happens when you use these? And we've got to start with what matters most, the patient. How does this simple map literally take them from total confusion to crystal clarity? The results are, well, they're pretty incredible. In a recent study, they looked at all those patients who showed up completely undecided. And after just one consultation using these charts, 92% of them made a clear decision. 92! That's, wow. The indecision just disappears. And here's the kicker. This incredible clarity doesn't come at the expense of the patient experience. Just look at these scores. They're consistently high. But check out feeling heard and involved. 4.43 out of 5. That's huge. Patients didn't just feel informed. They felt genuinely empowered. This quote from a patient just says it all, doesn't it? Helpful to actually see the position that I am in, rather than just being told. That right there, that's the magic. The power of making it visual. It's not just theory, it works. Okay, but this is where the story gets really interesting. This newfound clarity, it doesn't just make people feel better. It actually changes what they do. And this is where the ripple effect on the whole system becomes, well, pretty shocking. So check this out. They looked at the group of patients who walked in the door expecting to get surgery. After using the charts, a full 1/3 of them, 33.9%, ended up choosing a completely different, non-surgical option. 1 in 3 completely changed their minds. Now, we have to be super clear about this. This is not about rationing care. The source material hammers this point home. This shift is all about people making better informed decisions that actually match their own preferences, because for the first time, they actually understood all the choices they had. And here's the proof. This is so important. The tool isn't just a sneaky way to push people away from surgery. In that same study, you know how many patients who came in expecting non-operative care ended up choosing surgery? 0. Not 1. It just goes to show this is about supporting the right choice for the right person, not just saving money. Okay, for all you data nerds out there, you're going to love this. What you're seeing is a negative correlation of 0.83 between a patient's Oxford score, which is just a measure of their pain and how well they can function, and whether they chose surgery. Statistically speaking, negative 0.83, that is a super strong signal.
So what does that number actually mean in plain English? It's simple. The people with the worst symptoms, the most pain, and the lowest function, they were the ones most likely to choose surgery. It proves the decisions weren't just random, they were perfectly aligned with who actually needed the operation the most. This is basically the scientific proof that the whole thing works.
So let's recap. We've got patients who are clearer, making better, clinically sound decisions. So now let's tie this all together and get to that million-pound conversation I mentioned at the start. Let's talk money and how this whole thing actually works on a system level.
The math here is actually pretty simple, but the result is mind-blowing. Okay, so you have an 8.8% shift away from surgery across all the patients. Now you scale that up to a typical hospital that sees, say, 2,000 of these patients a year. That's 176 fewer surgeries every single year, and at a cost of about £9,500 per surgery, you're looking at a projected saving of around £1.66 million every single year.
But it's not even just about the money, right? Think about what that actually means. That's 176 operating room slots that are now free for someone else. It means less work for the pre-assessment teams, fewer pointless follow-up appointments, and it directly helps shorten those brutal waiting lists we were talking about. It's a huge boost for elective recovery. At the end of the day, it's what the people behind this call a triple win, and it's the perfect way to describe it. First, the patient wins. They get more control and a better experience. Second, the doctors and nurses win. They're empowered with a tool that just makes their job easier and more effective. And third, the whole system wins. It becomes more efficient and, honestly, more sustainable.
So that leaves us with one last big question to think about. If a simple visual map can do all of this, if it can completely transform one complex medical decision, just imagine. What other tough conversations, what other complex choices, not just in healthcare, but anywhere, are just sitting there, waiting for someone to draw a better map?